Okay, so we're today in the Gemara, in the end of Daf Tzadik Beis Amud Beis. So yesterday we learned an interesting thing, that sometimes it's possible that a mechitza could create a chumrah. Now, usually a mechitza creates a kula, but a mechitza creates an isser. The Gemara brought an example by klayim, that usually when you have klayim, what's the halacha? You separate the zroyim from the kerem 4 amas and you're fine. But what happens if you have 2 chatzeros, a large chatzer and a small chatzer that's open into the large chatzer? The small chatzer is considered to be like part of the large chatzer, and therefore it's like one thing. And even if you make a separation of 4 amas, it doesn't help. Even though l'chayre, in such a case, you sort of have mechitzas on the sides of the large chatzer that are separating the two. Nevertheless, the mechitza creates an isser. So the Gemara here is trying to find, is there a source for such a thing, that a mechitza creates an isser? That's the focus of the Gemara over here. Amalei Rava la Abaya. V'loi matzinu mechitza le'isser. Do we not find that a mechitza could create a chumrah, an isser? V'ha'itmer, we learned regarding a case of a sukkah, sichech al gabe achsadra. A person placed a sukkah on top of an achsadra, sheyesh lo patzimin, which has patzimin. Ksheira, it's going to be kosher. So take a look in the picture. This is going to be on page Ayin Hey, in picture Tov Kuf Mem Vav. Okay, so we're talking over here in achsadra. A sukkah that's made on a achsadra it has 2 walls. As you see over here, there's 2 walls, and it's placed on poles, on beams. So such a kind of sukkah is going to be kosher. Okay, see what's going on here? Patzimin are the beams. Besides the walls that you have on both sides, you have the beams. When you look over here at the picture Tov Kuf Mem Vav is Rashi's shit in the Gemara. Taisvis, however, disagrees. Taisvis learns the picture right below it, Tov Kuf Mem Ches, that the 2 walls of this sukkah are not on the sides, like an open mavoi, but it's near each. It's one wall on, let's say, Mizrach, and 1 wall on Tzafon. Okay, that's
Rashi, where's the 3rd wall?
So their 3rd wall is the tefach. That patzimin, those beams are tefach wide. Okay, so
on the way there's 4 walls.
Okay, but you only need 2 walls and a tefach. So the machlekes over here in Rashi and Taisus is if they're across each other or no, they're beside each other, the 2 walls. So it's kosher. V'ilu hishva patzimeha psula. If, however, you put a board in such a way that now the tefach of that pole is not usable anymore, so then it's going to be puzzle. So that's going to be either, according to Rashi, in picture Tov Kuf Mem Zayin. So if you look good in the picture, you see he put a board. You put along the wall, he put up 2 boards. So now you don't have that tefach of the beam. Or according to Taisvis, he put up a board over there by the beam, so you don't have, he put boards. So you don't. Yeah, it's blocking the beam. It's blocking the tefach of the beam. So in such a case, you don't have your 3rd wall. You don't have the tefach of your 3rd wall. It's going to be puzzle. So what is he trying to say from here? So Rava tells Abaye, here you see he puts up a board. He's creating a wall with his board, but yet this itself creates an isser. It makes the sukkah puzzle. Amalei Abaye, so 2 things. First of all, Abaye says, Lididi ksheira. My opinion is that in such a case, the sukkah is going to be kosher. And we're going to learn about this later in the next plot, where the Gemara is going to say that Abaye holds that in such a case you could still use the inyan of pi tikra yored v'saisim, because it has 2 walls and it has the beams and it has the roof, so it's yored v'saisim and it closes it up. We'll see in Mitzvah later. So first of all, Abaye says, my opinion is it's still going to be kosher. Lididach, and even according to you that it's pasul, this is not a case where you see that the mechitzis is a chumrah. Siluk mechitzisi. What he's doing is, by putting up those boards, he's removing the mechitzis, because he's putting the boards there, blocking the tefach of the poles. So he's removing the mechitzis. So it's a siluk mechitzis. Okay, so it's a pel actually. What the Gemara Havim in it was. It's so obvious to see. Amalei Rabbe Barav Chanan la Abaye. Rabbe Barav Chanan says to Abaye, "V'loy matzinu mechitza le'isser." Do we not find a case where a mechitza could create a isser? So he brings another example. Vatanya, we learned the case. This is going back to Kalayim. Bayis shechetzi mekura. You have a house that half of the house has a roof on it. V'chetzi ein mekura. The other half doesn't have a roof on it. Gefanim kan. So you have a vineyard that you planted under the roof. Mutal izraya kan. In the exposed area of the house, it's not under the roof. You can plant over there whatever you want, vegetables, whatever it is. Why? because when you're under the roof, there's the klal pitikra yored v'saisim. That area is like closed off, and in the other area you can plant, separate it. But ve'elu hishves kiruyai, if you finish off the roof and now it's all covered, asa. It's all going to be asa because it's all under the same roof. So what do you see over here? Adding a roof puts it all under the same roof and it becomes asa. So it shows you that it's not mamash a mechitza, but it's similar to the concept of a mechitza. Adding a roof is going to be a chumrah. Amalei, so he said over here, also it's the same concept. Hasam siluk mechitzasu. By finishing off the roof, you're removing a mechitza without having the full roof. So because only half of it has a roof, so it's pitikra yored v'saisim, you have a separation. By finishing off the roof, so now you don't have that pitikra yored v'saisim, it all is under the same roof. It's under the same roof, so it's going to be yasser. So the Gemara tries one more time. I think this is the last one the Gemara tries. Shalach le Rav ala Abaye b'yad Rav Shmaya bar Zira. So Rav sent to Abaye a shliach. He sent him Rav Shmaya bar Zira to ask him a question. Do we not find an example where you do have a mechitza that's going to create a chumrah or iser? Vatanya, we learned in Abraisa regarding klayim. Yesh b'mechitza sakerem lahakol ulahachmer. A mechitza in a vineyard sometimes could be a kula and sometimes could be a chumrah. Keitzad, what are the examples for this? Kerem anatua ad ikke mechitza. If you have a vineyard that's planted all the way up to the fence of your chotzer. Zereya me ikke mechitza ve'elech. On the other side of the fence, you could plant all the way up to the fence. She'ilu ein sham mechitza. If there was no fence between your vineyard and your other field, let's say where you have wheat, so then marchik dal damas. You have to separate between the vineyard and the other things 4 amas. And then you can plant. But but over here though, because you have a wall or a fence in between, you can plant on both sides all the way up to the fence. This is a case where we see that the mechitza creates a kula. You can plant all the way up to the fence. Where do we see that a mechitza will be a chumrah? If your kerem was planted 11 amas removed from the wall, so now you have again. So it was removed from the wall 11 amas. So you have a lot of empty space. 11 amas is, let's say, I don't know, about 16, 17, 18 feet. You have a lot of empty space between your vineyard and the wall, the end of your chotzer. Could you plant over there anything? So it says, Lo yavi zer al-sham. Do not bring and plant anything in that area between your vineyard and the wall. She'il mali ein mechitza. If there was no wall, marchik dal damas, then you would be able to just go away from your vineyard 4 amas v'zereya, and you would be allowed to plant there. But now that there's a wall there, you can't plant at all. This is a case where the wall creates a chumrah. Now, what would be the reason for this? Why, if you have a wall, can't you plant there? If you don't have a wall, then as long as you're 4 amas away, you could plant even in the same yard, in the same area. So, in the Hemshech of the Gemara, it's going to bring another Mishnah, and we'll see the Hezbollah for this. But the point is, you see over here that because there's a wall, it creates a chumrah. Amalei, so Abaye responded to this, according to your opinion, that this is considered to be a source of a mechitza that creates a chumrah. Why are you asking me from a Braisa that says this? Why don't you ask me from a Mishnah that says this? The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, karachas hakerem, a karachas of a kerem. This is a vineyard that has an empty space in the middle, like a karachas. This is going to be picture Tav Kuf Nun. Okay, so you have a vineyard that's planted around and around, but in the middle it has an open empty space. And you want to be able to plant in the middle empty space. How much empty space do you need in the middle to be allowed to plant there separately? Zroyim. So the karachas hakerem beishamay emrim choftal ramas. You have to have 24 amas of an empty space in the middle to be allowed to plant there. Beisil emrim tezayin ama. If you have 16 amas of empty space in the middle, you can plant there. Machel hakerem. Machel hakerem is the opposite example. Machel means it's surrounded with a vineyard. That's going to be picture. Actually, so again, Machal HaKerem means that the vineyard is in the middle and it's surrounded with empty space. Picture Tov Kuf Nun Aleph. So how much space do you need surrounding it to still be allowed to plant in this area which is surrounded by a wall? There's a wall around it, and there's a kerem planted in the middle, and you have empty space around and around. That's the Machal. Machal means it goes around and around, like when you dance in a circle. So the Machal HaKerem. So how much empty space do you need there? So again, it's a machlokes over here. Beishama yomrim tezayin ama. Here you have to have 16 amas to be allowed to plant. Beis Hillel yomrim yud beis ama. Beis Hillel says as long as you have 12 amas, you're allowed to plant there. Now the Mishnah itself spells out the details there. Ve'ezi karachas hakerem. What is the meaning of a karachas hakerem? Kerem shecharev emtzi yisai. A vineyard that you planted around and around, but in the center it's empty. So now the Mishnah spells it out according to Beis Hillel. If you don't have an empty space of 16 amas in the middle, you're not allowed to plant there anything. If you do have 16 amas in the middle, so then you have to leave empty space to have an area to be able to work. Right, as you see here in the picture, if you're going to have 16 amas according to Beis Hillel, so you're going to have 8 amas of space, 8 by 8 amas that you'll be able to plant, and then 4 amas on both sides for your aveda, for your wagon, or to be able to go around, to be able to work in between the kerem and the zrayim that are in the middle. There has to be a space always of 4 amas separating the kerem and the zrayim, according to Beis Hillel. Okay? Where am I holding over here? So that is the karachas hakerem. What's the case of machal hakerem, that you have the kerem in the middle? Bein hakerem legeder. So in between the kerem and the geder, there's empty space. So the kerem, the vineyard, is in the middle. She'im ein sham yud beis ama. If you don't have at least 12 amas between the vineyard and the wall, lo yavi zera l'sham. Do not bring and don't plant anything there. Ha yisham yud beis ama. If you have 12 amas there, noisan le kedeh vedasai. So you have to have a space of 4 amas between your vineyard and whatever else you planted there, and also another 4 amas between what you planted and the wall. Okay, so as you see this in picture, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph, the 4 amas has to be on both sides. 4 amas between the vineyard and also on the other side between the wall and what you planted over there. Okay, so you see over here that if there's a wall there, you have to have 4 amas separating from your wall and what you planted. What if there wouldn't have been any wall there? It's an open yard that just goes all the way to the end without a wall. Then you're allowed to plant all the way up to the end. You don't have to make any separation, any space between the wall and what you planted. Okay, so we see over here that l'chayre, it's a chumrah. So what you could have asked from this Mishnah, the wall creates a chumrah. So Abaye answers, no, but this is not a chumrah at all. This has nothing to do with a chumrah. What's the pshat over here? Elo ha sam lav hayne taimem. The reason over here why you have to make an empty space between what you planted and the wall. Elo the chol arba the bachir as the word elo the chol dald ames legabi kerem avedis hakerem. So the empty space of 4 amas that you need between the vineyard and what you're planting, that we understand, because you need that empty space to be able to go in between, to work with the vineyard. So that's still considered to be an extension of the vineyard. That's always the shear of 4 amas that you have to leave. Legabe geder, and now, but on the other side, that you have to leave an empty space between what you're planting and the wall. What's the reason? Kivin de loim is daron afkuri mafkiluhu. That's an area that a person will not want to plant. And therefore he's mafka that area. He's not planning on using it at all. Why not? Because Rashi explains, if you plant all the way up to your wall is not going to stand. The wall is going to, the earth is going to be too shvach, and the fence is not going to stand. So a person doesn't plant all the way up to the wall. So the beini, so therefore you only have the space in between. If you have a space of 4 amas, so that's a place that's chashiv enough, and we allow you to plant it there. And if not, we don't allow you to plant there. So the space between the only reason why when you have a wall, you have to leave that empty space of the wall, it's not the pshat that it's a chumrah, that the wall creates a chumrah. Pashat, practically, a person will not plant there, because a person doesn't plant all the way up to the wall, it's going to make the wall shvach. So therefore, when we allow a person to plant in a vineyard, it's only if there's enough space to plant 4 amas. 4 amas is chashiv enough. If you don't have space to plant 4 amas, it's all considered to be part of the vineyard, and we don't allow you to plant there. So this is the end of the sugya. The Gemara could not disprove what Abaye said, that we never find such a thing that a mechitza creates a chumrah. Even in this case, it's not the pshat that a mechitza creates a chumrah. Now the Gemara goes back, connected to what we learned in the Mishnah, b'negea to a large chatzar, open into a small chatzar. So the Gemara has a similar thing, b'negea to another case. Amar Rav Yehuda, gimel karfifos ze b'tzad ze. You have 3 karfifos that are near each other. So let's see, this is going to be picture Tov Kuf Nun Beis. Okay? See picture Tov Kuf Nun Beis. Person is out in the field, out in a valley somewhere, and he creates these partitions in this kind of a shape. What are we talking about over here? So this goes back, this is a hemshech to a sugya that we learned in the second Perek, a very long time ago. The Gemara over there says, b'derech klal, when you have a wall for a Rishus HaYachid, you have to have proper walls, a proper mechitza. Proper mechitza means a shesi ve'erev, meaning it's not enough just to put up reeds around the area, even if there's no 3 tfachim in between, but you have to have reeds, and also in the other direction. Shesi and Erev. Horizontal and vertical. It has to go in both directions. You have to have a proper mechitza. What happens if a person is traveling and it's coming right before Shabbos and he gets stuck somewhere in the middle of whatever, and he has to create a makeshift mechitza to be able to create a Rishus HaYachid to be able to use that area. So you put up a mechitza where you just put up a bunch of reeds around, and it's not a proper mechitza. Could you rely on this mechitza? In a usual situation, it's not a good mechitza. You can't rely on it. But because the person is stuck in the middle of somewhere, he was traveling, they allowed him to rely on the mechitza. However, because this is a lenient mechitza, it's not a proper mechitza, the Gemara there said that it's only to a certain extent could you rely on it. They only allowed you to use it up to a certain size. The size that you need for what you need. But more than that, they don't allow you to make such a kind of mechitza. What's that size? Base sasayim. Okay, 100 by 50 amas, base sasayim. But however, the Gemara before said, and this is a very important point for the sugya, the piece of Gemara we're going to learn here now, this is all if it's an individual. An individual that doesn't have too many things that he has to use. So, if he's making this shvache mechitza, he's only allowed to use up to that size if it's one person. How about if it's a whole caravan of people? It's a lot of people that are together. What says a lot of people? What's one and what's... So the Gemara says if it's as long as 3 people. If you have 3 people that were carrying together and they're making this makeshift mechitza, it doesn't matter how large it is. You can make it as large as you wanted. Okay, so over here, what are we talking about? We're talking about a person that made the mechitza in this shape that you see here in the picture. So there's the 2 on the sides and the one in the middle. The one in the middle is smaller. And it's open to the 2 on the sides, which are larger. Now the thing is, he created this makeshift mechitza larger than the required minimum size that you're allowed. Only up to base Hasam, he made it larger than the minimum size. And there's one person, you're not allowed to make it too big because the Chachamim will only makel, Chachamim will only makel to make it up to a certain size of what you need, not larger than that size. But he made it larger than that size. As you see here in the picture, these are 3 single people. There's one person on one side, there's one person on the other side, and there's one person in the middle. These 3 people set up their area in this place that they got stuck in before Shabbos. So now the question is, they're open to each other. Could I combine these 3 people as if they're all one, and once all these 3 people are now one, they can make it as large as they want? Because as I said before, 3 people are a rabbim, and they can make it as big as they want. That's the shayla of it that we're going to discuss.
What separates one from the other? How does it become shalosh kafifos?
So let's see inside the Gemara. Omer Rav Yehuda, Gimel karfifos zeh b'tzad zeh. I have these 3 karfifos, these 3 areas that are enclosed with this makeshift mechitza, one beside another. Shnayim achitzainim megufafim. The 2 on the outside are larger, so they're megufafim, meaning they have, if you look in the picture here, because they're larger, so they have these parts of the mechitza on the sides that encloses them. And the middle one, v'antzai einim megufaf, and the middle one is a smaller karfif that's completely open to the other 2 on the sides. V'yachid bezeh, and there's a single person that's in each one of them that created this enclosure. So in such a case, nasa kishayore, they all become like one big group. V'naisin lahem called sarkan. We allow them to make it as large as they want because they're considered to be like one big group. So this goes back to the klal that it said in the Mishnah, that the ketana becomes bottled to the gedayla. So therefore the people that are on both sides, it's as if they're inside the ketana. The ketana is like bottle, is tuffle, is secondary to the gedayla, and therefore it's as if they are also together with the person that's in the middle, and therefore it's like all 3 people are together, and if all 3 people are together, then they're a shayara. They're considered to be a group of people, and they can make this enclosure as large as they want. How about if it's going to be in the opposite example? Vadai, definitely the halacha will be, it's a little bit of an unusual expression the Gemara uses. Vadai, for sure the halacha will be the opposite. Emtsai megufif. If the middle one is larger, the shnai mechitzainim, einam begufafen. And the two outer ones are going to be larger. Take a look in the next picture. Right? What? They're going to be smaller. The outside ones are smaller. Sorry. Yeah, you see it in the next picture on the top of the page. Larger ones, the big ones, and the outer ones are smaller. So now the question is, what's in this case? Would I say that all these three people are combined? The answer is no. V'yachid bezeh, v'yachid bezeh. You have one person in each one of these enclosures. V'yachid bezeh. The third one. So each one of them has one person in it. Ein naisn lahem ela beis sheish. Each one of them are separated from each other. In such a case, so you have the middle person in the middle and the two outer ones that are the smaller ones, so therefore they're separated from each other. Then it doesn't become tafel, and therefore in such a case, each individual is separate, and each one can only make one a base asayim, which together would be the sheish sa'ah that each one can make, and therefore they can't go more than that amount.
Why don't they become buckled to the middle one, and how become one?
Because it's separated. There's the gifuf, on the sides, it separates them from each other. If the middle one is larger and the side ones are smaller, so then the middle one is not tuffled to the side one, so the middle one is separated. The middle one cuts off and separates them from each other. So they don't become bottled to each other.
The side ones are buckled to the middle one.
No, but that doesn't help. Doesn't help. Okay, let's see the Hemshech of the Gemara. So now the Gemara has an ibaya and the opposite, when you get to this case, the Gemara has an ibaya. Ibaya lahu echad bezeh ve'echad bezeh. How about if you have one person that's on one side, another person that's on the other side, and you have shnayim b'emtzai, two people that are in the middle. Mahu. What's going to be the halach over here? So over here, in such a case, the point is that the person that's in the middle, he's going to be tuffled to the ones that are on the side, and it's as if he is on the side. The people that are on the side are not as if they're in the middle. Okay, again, back to this last case that we just learned over here. Because you are in the larger chutzner, the one that's in the larger chutzner and is open to the smaller chutzner, it's as if the person in the larger chutzner is found in the smaller one. So over here, what happens if in the middle one you have two people? So now, what's the Gemara Shaila? Talk to Gemara, the two tzaddim are as follows. If these two people that are in the middle are going to go out to one side, there are two people in the middle, so now they go out to one side. You have three people there. So if you have three people, they can make it as large as they want. If they're going out to the other side, there's also three people. So because there are two people in the middle, and if they're in the larger one in the middle, we see them as if they are in the smaller one on the side, so you have three people. Or maybe I shouldn't say that. Chad lahachanafik v'chad lahachanafik. And achanami, there are two people in the middle, but one person will go this direction, one person will go in the other direction, and therefore you don't have three people together. Only if you have three people together are you allowed to make it as large as you want. If you're going to say that when you have two people in the middle, so each one goes in another direction. So you never have three people together. Shnayim bazeh v'shnayim bazeh ve'echad b'emtzoi. What happens if you have two people on each side and you have one person in the middle? So you have a total of 5 people over here. You have 2 on each side and 1 person in the middle. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha? Hacha vadai over here. L'chayda, you could definitely say ila hacha nafik. This person in the middle, if he goes out to either side, there's going to be 3 people there. He goes to the other side, now it's also going to be 3. So whichever side he goes out to, if you want to consider the person in the middle to be on one side, there are 3. Other side, also 3. So therefore, you can make it as large as you want. The person in the middle, he can go to here or he can go to here. You don't know where he's going to go. So therefore, we should say that there's only 2 people here, 1 person in the middle and 2 people in the other side. And therefore you never have 3 people together. So the Hilchas, the Gemara Paskins, Bay and Lakula. All these Bayis, we Paskin Lakula, because we're dealing with a Chumra Midrabanon. And I'll tell you that this is considered to be a proper Mechitza. So since this is a Chumra Midrabanon, so therefore we're Mekel Benegeh to this kind of enclosure. Amar Rav Chiste, the Gemara starts now a new inyan. Also talking about mechitzas, but a completely different inyan. Gedud chamisha umechitza chamisha. If you have a place which has a height of 5 tfachim, right? What happens if you have a place that has a height of 10 tfachim? So this is a place that only has a height of 5 tfachim, but then it also has a fence of 5 tfachim. Could you combine the height and the fence? You can't combine it. If you want to have a status of Rishus HaYachid, it either has to be all the height of 10 tfachim or all a mechitza of 10 tfachim. You can't combine partially the height and partially the mechitza, which is a picture Tafkuf Nun Dalet. Okay, so you see the height of 5 tfachim because of the ground is elevated, and the height of 5 tfachim mechitza, which is a pretty low mechitza. So you can't combine these two. This is Hur of Chiste, right? So the Gemara is going to ask him this now from a Braise. Frek the Gemara Meisve. We learned in a Braise. Shtei chatzeiroi zu l'mayla mizu. You have 2 courtyards that are right near each other, and one courtyard is positioned above, higher up in the ground. Vel yoyne gvayim and atachtayna sarat tfachim. The higher chatzer is 10 tfachim above. Oy sheyesh ba gidud chamisha or mechitza chamisha. The Braise clearly talks about this case. The other chatzer that's above it is only 5 tfachim higher, but it also has a wall that's 5 tfachim higher. Ma'arvin shnayim ve'ma'arvin echad. They have to make 2 separate Eiruvin chatzeris. They can't make an Eruv chatzeris together because they have a 10 tefach wall separating, or the height of 5 tfachim and the height of a 5 tefach wall that you do combine and it separates them. So they can't make an Eruv chatzeris together. Pachas mikan, if the difference in the height is less than this, ma'arvin echad ve'ma'arvin shnayim. So then they could make an Eruv chatzeris together. We learned this klal before. Anytime you have 2 chatzeris and there's no 10 tfachim wall that separates them, they can make an Eruv chatzeris together. So you see clearly in this Braise, not like Rav Chista, that you have partially height, partially a mechitza, and it separates them. Amar Rave, so Rave answers, Meide Rav Chista b'tachtaina. Rav Chista would be Meide in this case that the chatzer below cannot make an Eruv chatzeris with the chatzer above. Hoyel v'roye pnei asara. The chatzer below, what is the chatzer below sees a full height of 10 tfachim that's separating between him and the lower chatzer. So if you look at the picture, the chatzer, the top chatzer, so he only has a 5 tefach, a 5 tfachim mechitza that's separating between him and the lower chatzer. But the chatzer below has the full height of 10 tfachim that's separating him from the chatzer above. So in such a case, Rav Chista would be maide that the chatzer tachtaina is completely separated from the chatzer alyayna. Hayil v'roye pnei asara. Frek the Gemara. Okay, so that's an answer for the chatzer tachtaina. But hihachi tachtaina ta'arav shnayim v'loy ta'arav echad. But the chatzer below, the tachtaina should have to make an Eruv chatzeris separately, and it should not be allowed to make the Eruv chatzeris together. That's the tachtaina. But al yayna loy ta'arev loy echad v'loy shnayim. But the al yayna now is going to be stuck. The al yayna cannot make an Eruv alone. Why can't it make an Eruv alone? Because it doesn't have a proper mechitza separating it from the lower chatzer. From the perspective of the top chatzer, when you look out of the top chatzer, he's connected to the lower chatzer. He only has a 5 tfachim wall. But v'loy shnayim, and he also can't make separated because looking at it from the perspective of the lower chatzer, the lower chatzer is disconnected from him. So the top chatzer is stuck. He should not be able to make him a Eruv chatzeris, not alone and not separately. So why does it say over here in the Braise that he could make separately? So we understand beneged to the lower chatzer. The lower chatzer has a full height of 10 tfachim separating him from the top chatzer. But from the perspective of the top chatzer, he has a problem. He can't make him an Eruv chatzeris, not separately and not together. So therefore the Gemara says, this Braise, we're going to have to add a detail in the case of this Braise. Amar Rabba bar Ula, what are we talking about over here? Kagoyin shehoisel yoinem megufefes ad eser ames. Really, it does have a wall of 10 ames high. Elamai, this wall that is 10 ames high that separates the 2 chatzeris has an opening. It has an opening, and that opening is not a full opening. It's not like mamash a door, a full opening. It has an opening, and in that area of the opening, there's only 5 tfachim high. So take a look and picture Tav Kuf Nun Vav. So here you see that be'emes there is a separation of a wall of 10 tfachim, but in the middle of that separation there's an opening, but it's not a full opening. In that opening it only has a wall which is 5 tfachim high. That's what we're talking about. So therefore, they make the Erev Chatzeris separate and not together. Okay, this is the Akimta of Rabbi Barola. No, so the Gemara is not satisfied with this. The Gemara says, if that's the case, Ihachi e miseife, what does it say in the Seife? Pachis mikan, if it's less than 5 tfachim, ma'arvin echad ve'ein ma'arvin shnayim. Then they make the Erev Chatzeris together, and they cannot make the Erev Chatzeris separately. Okay, so when it says now pachis, what are we talking about? We're talking about in that opening. In that area where there's the opening, and the Reisha meant that the opening is still with a 5 tfachim high mechitza. Now it's saying that if in that opening it's a full opening, so then ma'arvin shnayim ma'arvin echad ve'ein ma'arvin shnayim. They can't make an Erev Chatzeris separately. Why not? Fragt the Gemara, iboy chat ta'arev, iboy treim ta'arev. They should be able to make the Erev Chatzeris separately. What's the halacha usually by Erev Chatzeris? If you have such a situation where you have a doorway that's opening, and that doorway is not more than 10 tfachim. If the opening is more than, not 10 tfachim, sorry, 10 amas. If the opening is more than 10 amas, it's like one big chotzer. They cannot make an Erev Chatzeris separately. What happens if you have an opening that's within 10 amas? Then they have a choice. They can make together, they can make separate. So over here in the Seifa, we're talking about a situation where you have an opening which is 10 amas or under the 10 amas. So why does it say in the Braisa that they must make the Erev Chatzeris together? They should have a choice to make it separately or together. So now the Gemara adds another detail to the story that we didn't say before. We're going to have to add another Akimta here. And for the Gemara, Amarabe, Bereiderave, Kagoin, Shenifritza, Hatachtaina, Bimilua, Le'elyaina. The case over here is that the chotzer below is a smaller chotzer and it's fully open to the top chotzer. So this is going to be the next picture Tov Kuf Nun Zayin. So not only do you have two different chatzeris and one is higher, the ground is higher than the other one. All these details over here to the Akimta. So you have to, the Gemara keeps on adding another part to the story. So again, the ground is 5 tfachim higher, and then it does have a 10 tfachim wall around it, but that 10 tfachim wall has an opening in the middle, and in that opening, the lower chotzer is fully open to the top chotzer. Why is it fully open? Because it's smaller than the top chotzer, so it's fully open. The top chotzer is not fully open, because it has the sides that are still enclosing it. Because it's a larger chotzer, so it still has the sides that are enclosing it. And therefore what? In such a case, the lower chotzer is completely open to the top chotzer, so it has to make an Erev Chatzeris together. But the Gemara still asks, Ihachi tachtoina chat ta'arev terei loy ta'arev. The lower chotzer is totally open to the top chotzer. It should have to make an Erev Chatzeris together. El yaina, but the top chotzer, iboy ta'arev terei ta'arev, iboy chat ta'arev. The top chotzer should still have an option. Why should it still have an option? Look at the picture. The top chotzer has a partial enclosure, so it's like an opening with a partial enclosure. It's just like a doorway. It should still have an option to make an Erev Chatzeris separately or together. So why did it say in the Sefer in the Braisa that it must make the Erev Chatzeris together? Answers the Gemara, you're right. The Braisa wasn't talking about the top chotzer. And for the Gemara, enachanami. When it said in the Braisa that they must make the Erev Chatzeris 1 and not 2, it was only talking about the lower chotzer, but not the top chotzer. So the Gemara goes into all of these ekimtis and all of these cases just in order to answer Rav Chista's opinion that said that we can't combine gidud and mechitza. You can't combine height of 5 tfachim together with a mechitza of 5 tfachim. But now the Gemara is going to bring another opinion that argues with Rav Chista, and that's what we paskin like, and you don't have to make all of these akimtis here. Darish Mereimer said, Gidud Chamisha, you have an area which has the height of 5 tfachim, or Mechitza Chamisha, and it also has a Mechitza which is 5 tfachim. Mitzdarfen, you could combine the height and a fence. Ashkeche Raviner Ravacha Bereder Rave, he found Ravacha Bereder Rave, and he asked him, Omalei, the Bach is not good, is this part of the Gemara? But the Gemara says, he asked him, Tani Mar Midi b'mechitza, did you learn any chiddush about this question of a mechitza, whether you could combine the mechitza half of the height and the height of the ground, the other half of the height? So he told him, Amalei loy. No, I didn't learn anything about this. So the Bach is not good as this because it's a very strange thing. Why would the Gemara bring this? It's a very funny thing the Gemara brings. One Amayra asked another Amayra, do you learn anything about this? No. So it doesn't teach us anything. Why would the Gemara say this? Either way, the Gemara continues, Vehilchase, the halacha is, Gidot Chamisha and Mechitza Chamisha Mitzdarfen. When you have the height of 5 Tfachim and a Mechitza which is 5 Tfachim high, you could combine both together. So we don't paskin like this whole thing of Rav Chisda, and all the Kimtis the Gemara said before in the Braisa, according to this opinion, is not necessary. You can learn the Braisa Kipshutai. Okay, now the Gemara has another Ibaya, which is a completely different case. Not negated to this Inyan. Zok the Gemara Azay. One more shtickle here. Boy, Rav Oishie asked the following questions. The Yurin Haboim B'Shabbos. New people, this is going back to the halacha of Erev Chatzeris. So you have new people that are now part of your Chatzer. And when did these new people come in? On Shabbos. How did new people move in on Shabbos? They didn't move in on Shabbos. You had 2 Chatzeris that were side by side. And the wall broke down between the 2 Chatzeris. So now you have new people that are part of your Chatzer. So a wall broke down in the middle of Shabbos, so they're going to answer on the Erev Chatzeris. Amar Rav Chisda, or the Bachas Geiris of Chirina, Rav Chisda says, Tashema, I'll bring you a raya from the Mishnah that we just learned before. Chatzer Gedoyle, Shenifritz ala Chatzer Ketana, Chatzer Gedoyle that was broken down into a small Chatzer, HaGedoyle Muteres, Vaktana Asura, the Ketana becomes Asur. Vipnei Shi Kepischa Shal Gedoyle, because it's totally open to the Gedoyle. So the way he understood the Pshat in this Mishnah is, when did it break down? The wall between the Gedoyle and the Ketana broke down in the middle of Shabbos. And it says that it becomes Asr. So we see that in the middle of Shabbos, a wall breaks down, it becomes Asr. Rabbi says, no, it's not a raya. He's talking about this chatzah that was built this way or broke down this way even before Shabbos. Not talking about that it happened in the middle of Shabbos. That's what we could say. Abaye said to Rabbi, Loi tememar eimer. Don't say, you could say that this is the Pshat in the Mishnah. Elavadai, this must be the Pshat in the Mishnah. This opening was already from before Shabbos. The Hamar Huda Amar, you Rabbi said, and we learned this before, that he asked a question from Rav Huna, or Rav Yehuda, and he asked a question from Rav Yehuda. Erev derech HaPesach. When you make an Eruv between one Chatzar and another Chatzar, and there was an opening, V'nistam HaPesach, and in the middle of Shabbos, that opening was closed up. Or Erev derech halayin, you made an Eruv through a window. V'nistam halayin, and the window was closed up in the middle of Shabbos. Mahu, what happens now? Your Eruv Chatzeris is not good in the middle of Shabbos. V'amru li, and they answered me, Shabbos kivin shehutra hutra. The halacha of Eruv Chatzeris is, if the Eruv Chatzeris took effect when Shabbos came in, it was permitted when Shabbos came in, that continues throughout the entire Shabbos. So the same thing over here also, when a wall breaks down, we say the same thing. Once there was a heta from before Shabbos, the heta continues even later on, even though there's now more people living here because it's one big chotzer.
If it happens in Shabbos?
Even if it happened in the middle of Shabbos, that's the point here. If it happened in the middle of Shabbos, the heta still remains. Because the status of the chotzer does not change in the middle of Shabbos.